Hi there, welcome to Solutio. I'm Colin Davis, and today is March 3rd, 2026, and the website is shadowtechalchemy.com, also soluciopodcast.com, and melissamarimovie.com. So today I got my list of things that I think we might be talking about today, but as usual, I'm going to kind of take it as it goes, and of course, as things go on, we'll be fielding your comments in the chat, and if you want to call into the show, you can do that too. You can always do that by looking at the information that's in the YouTube description below. So you can, the call-in numbers are there, and they're also at soluciopodcast.com, so you're free to call in later in the show if you want to, or we can just hang out in the chat. That works well too. And so, right. So today, when I get started here, often it takes a while for folks to get on, and then I end up, talking about some of what I think are maybe some of the maybe not most important subjects, but the things that I wanted to touch on. I go ahead and break those out in the beginning of the show, and then people come on later. And so that's an issue. And then you have to go back and watch the show later. But that's just how it goes. Now, get my microphone situation better here. Now, so we're just gonna kind of go at this in whatever kind of organic way here. And I just wanted to say something. I always kind of generally talk kind of philosophical or broadly sort of meta perspective in the beginning, and then we kind of come down to the specifics. And the thing is I could use this example. So I look at X, right? X is Twitter. Twitter is now called X, as it was changed, as it was bought by Elon Musk. And this is sort of just it's mainly politics that's on there. There's other subjects that are on there too, but it's mainly politics. And it's, people say it's the town square. So anyone and everyone is on there with an opinion. And this is the kind of situation where in the past, people would have opinions about politics, global affairs or whatever, and this would be discussed at the dinner table. They'd be reading the newspaper and they'd discuss it at the dinner, a water cooler, and then they might run into a friend downtown or something like that. But the average person was not fully aware of what the general public's opinions were on all these big issues. But now we have this situation where everybody's been thrown into this pile, this social media pile, and everybody gets to see what the opinions of other people are, and it's shocking. It's like, wow, I didn't know, you guys were out there. I didn't know people thought and talked this way, or maybe it's also the anonymity of the whole thing, that people feel more free to speak, in a more primal way that they wouldn't have done before. And so it's, and this, we're just, it's been going on. How long have we had social media? 15 years or something. But on X, it's really, really apparent that there's this huge disparity in I would say levels of consciousness, levels of psychosocial consciousness, where people are at in their ability to analyze situations, analyze each other, analyze themselves, and their ability to how reactive they are, how triggerable and reactive are they. And it's the whole spectrum on there. and so it's a lot to handle. And I think we're just, as humans, and especially in the West, where we're in other countries, I think they're probably more limited in what, I'm not sure exactly, every country, every civilization has kind of a different ecosystem online. But in our Western ecosystem, we're still having to work through this and figure this out. But, I was looking at this, the whole thing with the Iran war that's going on. And we don't usually talk about politics here. I mean, I generally stay above the whole thing. And sometimes I'll go into it just for some specific type of analysis. But the Iran war the whole thing on that. And it's just so, if you have a psychological literacy, if you have a psychological viewpoint, if you've been around the block on this, if you're so-called red-pilled, you've seen these same cycles just going on over and over again. You've seen the politicians saying, I'm not going to get you into any new wars, or making all the promises. And then as soon as they get in there, they break the promises and they just go back to the same old deep state garbage that it's always been in our lifetimes, right? But now the lies are so transparent because one of the good things about social media and the internet is that we can inform each other around the gatekeepers. So we're not stuck, in just having to listen to what the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, or CNN or Fox News or whoever's, what they're saying. And so now it's to the point where there's so many independent researchers and there's so much information that's coming out that basically shows the government, the media, to be a bunch of liars, that it's like, it's just shocking. It's the emperor has no clothes syndrome. And it's just shocking. And, it was interesting when Joe Biden was the president, because he was so absolutely incompetent and he was so obviously being controlled. And it was so interesting to watch all of his tribal clan support him, not just in the paid influencers and all that, but the common people. Through social media, you could see their opinions. And it was so shocking to see how that they would support him, or how they would support Kamala Harris. And then if you were on the Republican side, you could just kind of shine a light on them and ridicule them. And it was so easy to laugh at their quote unquote clown world. It was just absolutely a clown world. But then Donald Trump gets in, and what has happened in the current Trump administration that didn't happen in the last administration. The last Trump administration, he was just having to, politically battle to stay afloat, because the whole system was trying to flush him. And so you never really got to see what he would do if he had the kind of power that he sought, right? And so you just saw all this battling going on, and it was easy for the Trump supporters to put faith in him and to trust him, because it looked like he was the underdog. It looked like he was being attacked. It looked like, from their point of view, that he was the good guy. And it was so obvious from their point of view that the Biden people were nasty and clownish at the same time. So, but now with the second Trump administration, now there's been a whole lot of time for his clan to kind of clean things up, and who knows what all kinds of things have gone on behind the scenes. But now he's in a position where maybe it's not even that he's beat them back, but maybe it's that the puppet masters, so to speak, have decided, no, we're going to roll with this guy and we're just going to control him. And perhaps that's what the whole Epstein thing, that's what that's all about and everything. But so now what we have is we have a Donald Trump who's not fighting for his life. We have a Donald Trump who has all the power that he wants to use, because the Democrats have been They've been pacified. They're asleep, right? And for whatever reason, their masters are telling them, no, let this guy do what he needs to do. Is what it looks like, because you're not seeing much of a fight from them. And so he's got whatever, it seems like he's got power. It seems like he's got leeway and everything. And then you get to see what he would really do. And you get to see how absolutely fraudulent Trump is. And how that he was always a con man. He was always a salesman, a used car salesman selling you a lemon. He was always that. He was always a Machiavellian narcissist. I don't know if he's a sociopath. I don't think it seems like he actually has empathy. That it seems like he does have empathy. But he's got so much infantile grandiosity. And he's so identified with his role. He's so stuck in his identification, in his persona. His persona is everything. And so he can't really self-reflect, and he can't admit to his mistakes. And so he just rolls and rolls and rolls and rolls like a narcissist does. And he just rolls and rolls, and just whatever happens. And now a big chunk, I'm speaking like this, critical of Trump, as someone who didn't vote for him, in the past elections, and thought, well, I'll give him a chance this time because maybe he is really the underdog. And I thought, I'm going to give him a chance. And he's putting Kennedy in, who I liked. And he's putting Tulsi Gabbard in, who I liked. And all that kind of thing. And so I was giving him a chance. And now I'm just seeing he's completely controlled. And I'm not going to get into all of the different, who he's controlled and all. And we just can only speculate. There's some big players that we do know. But so now it's just like, wow. And so a big chunk of his base, maybe 30% of his base, is just gone. And that was the 30% that he needed to break to actually win. Without that 30% of independents and Democrats and other people who switched over, disaffected non-voters who started to vote and everything, without them, he never could have won any of the elections. And so now they're gone. And they're gone. He's not getting them back. There's nothing Trump can do to get back that 20, 30% of these pissed off people that switched over for him or gave him a chance. And now it's the same old thing over and over again. And so it's like, wow, right? So we're not, some people say, well, I was a Republican, but Trump failed me. I'm going to vote for a Democrat now. That's ridiculous. What you want to do is just stay out of it. Just move on, stay out of it. If you want to be involved in state level politics, local level politics, yes, great. You can still do stuff there. It's less corrupt there. But why are we giving our attention to this whole thing? Now, I know we can't completely turn it off. And so it's there. It's right there in your face, and it's constantly talking to you. It's constantly, coming at you. So we have to have put some kind of attention on it. But we don't have to really get sucked into it, and we don't have to just like get pulled along and everything like that. We can just be, and this is how I actually did it for decades. I voted a long time ago in the 90s. And then I voted for, then I kind of became a libertarian, and I was like, oh man, all of this is gross. And then I voted for Ron Paul, who was a libertarian running in the Republican Party. And that kind of brought me back in. No, I think before that I voted for Cynthia McKinney in the Green Party, just because she was a 9/11 truther. And I was just like, yeah, sure. And and then I voted for Ron Paul in a primary, and then I was otherwise out of it. And so but I did get sucked in by the whole Trump thing, and I did to some degree trust him and say I'm going to give him a chance. And then now it's just obvious that that's over now, and I'm just like, okay, bye, I'm gone, see ya. And but we can still look at all the politics, and we can still analyze it and try to understand it from a meta level. And it's like, I wanted to say that when you look online and you look at all these people who are arguing with each other about politics, I've been working on this 4 quadrant model, as some of you know, and I've had to go back into integral theory a lot and all of this and different developmental models and everything, and it's like just kind of reoccurred to me, kind of popped back up, that people are at different levels of different stages of psychosocial consciousness, and they have different abilities to be able to handle their reactivity, and to be able to handle paradox and handle conflict and not project, right? Or the types of projections, or to be able to handle shame or handle identity conflicts. And if people are different levels of this. And so, when you're at the, like in integral theory, when you're at the red level, it's this, egocentric, this impulsive self mindset. And when you're very driven in that by that kind of level of consciousness, it's just combat. It's just warrior combat. It's just sword fighting, gun fighting all day long. And no one's going to ever admit they're wrong, and no one's going to feel any grief over hurting each other, and they're just going to stomp each other into the ground. And it's just that level of consciousness. And if you find yourself looking at people, listening to people at that level of consciousness and going, what's wrong with you? Why are you like this? They're literally at another stage of consciousness. It's like talking to a child, okay? And that's where they're at, and you can't change them. And then all the way up the spiral, so to speak, into different levels. Like, once you get past that stage, then you get into this mythic conformist stage. This is where the people in the monotheistic religions are, right? And so they're very, they're very attentive to what the morality is and what the rules are. And, so when people are breaking the rules, when they're going against God's rules, that's a real bad thing, and they will feel shame if they are identified as being hypocrites in that way. And they're in their stage of consciousness, and they're very it's very tribal. But so is the earlier one. And then you get to what they call the orange level. It's like the achiever level, right? So this is very prominent in the United States. The United States is kind of mostly centered around this mythic, religious, moral code level, and this achiever level. And as you go up, then you get to the sensitive self, the green level, and then from there into second tier, which is where we're kind of at here. I mean, we're not always in second tier. I'm not always in second tier. You always have lines of development, and you can always get triggered and regress down to a prior stage. But my general center of gravity is at second tier. And there's very few people out there that are like that. That's kind of one of the reasons why I have this show now, is to to find other people, or to just open the door and say, hey, this is a place where we talk and we think and we operate at second tier. Are you there? Is that where your center of gravity is? Come on in. Come into this lounge. Come into this cafe. if that's where you're at, because there's so few of us, right? So we have to have places where we can go where there's other people who are at our level of consciousness. And like I said, it is noted that we have our junk, we have our shadow material, we have our reactivity that's tied to lower stages, and they can be triggered up, and then we have to work through that. And so, but then we'll come back to our natural center of gravity. But you know, this is a certain kind of type of analysis. Now, at the second tier analysis, I didn't talk about, I mean, this is all just the integral theory stuff that anyone could look up. And by the way, if anybody wants to look up this kind of stuff that I talk about on these shows, I hope everybody is able to do AI-based research now. There's no reason not to be doing it, whether it's on Google or, I mean, I use this DuckDuckGo search platform. It's like a Google or whatever. And it's, you just, if you type in a question and put a question mark at the end of it, it will give you the option to press search assist. And then you'll have an AI, I think it's using ChatGPT, and it will just talk to you, and you can talk to it like a, you know, like a researcher. And then it will give you material back. Now, I've noticed that it's not as good as Grok, which is the platform that is under X, which I pay $8 a month for, or ChatGPT, which I just now joined because I've been using Grok for last year. Before a year ago, I was never using it, but and now I'm on ChatGPT. I think it's actually for certain kinds of academic type research, it's better. I wouldn't do any kind of political research on these platforms because they're all just totally slanted and everything. But for academic type research, ChatGPT is very good. But anyway, so I just hope that everybody has access or knows, just, you know, look up, join one of these AI programs, Perplexity, ChatGPT, Grok, one of these things, so that when we talk about subjects here that you're maybe not not so familiar with, like if I'm talking about integral theory or spiral dynamics or something, you can go to your AI program and say, give me a concise model of integral theory. Give me a concise breakdown of spiral dynamics or whatever we're talking about. And then boom, you'll get the Cliff Notes version. You know, you'll get some concise version, and then you can keep asking questions, and you can go through it until you're satisfied that you understand what the thing is. Now, I'm not saying that it's perfect or anything, but it will give you a basic education. As good or better than, you know, anybody on YouTube you're going to find. So, other than the masters, you know, like Ken Wilber and himself or whoever. But so I hope everybody's using that. I hope everybody is able to use search engines properly. You know, just in the older, before AI, you would really have to have a certain level of discernment and be able to, you know, put in search terms. You'd have to think to yourself, what are the keywords that I want this thing to be based on, this query to be based on? You'd have to think about it in terms of keywords in order to be accurate. And then you'd have to scan through all the results, and you have to go, no, I'm going to throw that one out and throw that one out. And you'd have to kind of discern. And you'd have to go read websites and take it all in and everything. Now with the AI thing, as far as just doing basic research goes, you can just go into these things and type in a question. And then boom, right there, you get something that's usable. So I hope you guys are using that. I hope you're really using that. Now, I want to say something about the AI programs, and I got so many other things to talk about today, but with the AI programs, you cannot use those as a replacement for your serious research that you are basing all your opinions on, or that you're putting out books, or that you're coaching or teaching or doing something like that, and you just dependent on ChatGPT to give you a curriculum. Because it'll do that. If you say, ChatGPT, I want to teach such and such subject, come up with a curriculum for me. It'll do that for you. But if you don't have any background information, you won't know what to throw out. and you won't know how to ask deeper questions to get it to, because it's not totally accurate and it makes mistakes and it leaves all kinds of stuff out. It's just like asking one person for an opinion. And so you can't use these programs to basically make yourself look like an expert. But what you can do is you can kind of use them like you were using like it was a kind of like a postdoctoral project, and you had these students, doing research for you and stuff. You had a team of people doing research for you, and they brought the research to you, and then you sifted through it and figured out what you wanted to use. ChatGPT or these AI programs will be your researcher, and you have to keep sending them back. Well, I have questions about this, and send them back, and then they'll keep coming back to you. So they're very good research assistants, but they are not substitutes. They are not ways that you can look and act like an expert in something that you're not. Like, I'm putting together this 4-quadrant shadow work program, and if I didn't already have 20 years in this subject matter, and then especially 12 years super invested in it with Melissa, and then having written 2 books on it, if I didn't have that in my background, I can easily see how using these programs would lead me astray. Because I'm using ChatGPT right now for the first time, really, to help me come up with to clarify my model, and I can see where it's all messed up and where it's really good. And so, yeah, so it's something to be used with caution and care, but definitely for learning about things that you may not be as knowledgeable about as other people, and then getting it to do quick research for you. It's fabulous. But so anyway, so that's what we're doing here, is that we're talking at second tier a lot of the time. And then we're just, imbibing the culture of this whole thing. And the more you guys get involved in it, the more it becomes, the better it gets, and the more we all learn, and the more this culture flows. So, I'm going through my notes. Now, I wanted to tell you that, okay, so when Melissa and I, when we started doing our work together, 2013, we were already kind of second tier people. We were already, just like right there at the edge of it, and just naturally. And then when we started doing all this brainstorming and coming up with everything that we put into Shadow Tech and all of that, we were just. At the time we were just downloading and everything, but we looked around to see who else was out there and who was talking and thinking at our level. And I say we're at second tier and stuff. I wasn't really saying that at the time. I'm like looking back at it and going, oh, okay, that's what was going on. There's just so few people at that level. But we were looking around and going, where are the people that can communicate with us and can add to this, or can educate us, or learn from us, or where are they? Where are the people? And so we were looking around, and we were in the Jungian. We went to some of the Jungian groups, and we did a workshop for a Jungian group, and we were thinking, okay, maybe it's the Jungians. Maybe they're the ones that can talk to us. Maybe they can understand where we're at. And they couldn't. I was like, what? A lot of the same, we understood I understood at the time some of the basic Jungian concepts, and I had been using them in my life, and so we could talk, and we had that kind of common language and everything. But then we were throwing in these second tier things, this meta-analysis. And they were like, what? Even though Jung himself is a second tier person. And so, very, very advanced for his time, obviously. But but so we were doing that and looking around and going, okay, where's our community? And then we're like, okay, maybe it's the red-pilled people. Maybe that's what it is, because we have this red-pilled awareness, and we're because that's what the whole shadow, that's what the shadow is all about. It's right. That's what red-pill people are looking at the shadow in the culture and the structure of civilization itself, and so that's they're focused on the shadow. And so we're like, oh, okay, those are our people. They're the ones that can handle what we're talking about, because we're talking about the shadow of the psyche, as above, so below. They're totally related, and so those people are going to come over and hang out with us and talk. And then they really didn't either. And so it's like, and I even put that second book out, a shadow work toolkit for the red-pilled initiate, thinking, okay, great, I'm going to hand this out to them. And they're going to use this. They're going to like this. They're going to like this toolkit. This is focused at them. This is a second tier toolkit for people who are red pilled. But they're like, I don't know. I'm over here just getting mad at the world for being all messed up and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but you're dumping your junk into the world. We're all dumping our shadow junk into the world, and then it coalesces, it creates these autonomous complexes. This is how you get the whole new world order situation that you're so focused on. It comes ultimately from us internally, from our own consciousness, and we haven't cleaned up our act internally. And so we're projecting, we're displacing it all out into the world. And then we're turning a blind eye to certain behaviors because there's something about those behaviors that those people have that we also have. And so we can't see it. We're in cognitive dissonance. And I'm trying to explain this to the red pill people. And I'm posting on social media every day. This is for years. This is the 2010s. And I'm getting a handful of people. There's always been a handful of people that followed me and Melissa. Or not followed, but that we followed them, they followed us, we're peers. There's always been a handful of people that are at the same level and can understand this and talk in a similar way. A handful. But I was just like, okay, so then that's not it. So I've just been going from one community to the next, and going, where are the people who can understand what we're talking about? And for a long time, I thought, okay, I went through these different communities and stuff and approached these different communities, all different conspiracy communities and different spiritual communities. We did podcasts with people and stuff like that. And it just never was really clicking with anybody. And then I was thinking, well, maybe it's the green people, in spiral dynamics or integral people. It's the green people. These are the more sensitive people, and they're not the progressives. Actually, the progressives are kind of angry activists. The woke people, the progressives, are kind of angry activists who sort of are potentially at the green level, but they got so much trauma stuff down there that they're getting sucked down. They're so triggerable. But there's all kinds of people who are at the green stage who are really very intelligent and sophisticated and sensitive and self-aware, and they're at least in some way trying to work on themselves. They're going to yoga classes or meditation, or they're reading, some kind of self-help books and stuff like that. And so there's a lot of people like that in the West. And I thought, okay, well, these people, they're right there at the cusp of second tier. So I thought, well, we're going to find a bunch of second tier people in this group, or people right there at the edge of that. And these are going to be the alchemists. These are going to be the people who are going to be able to do all the stuff that Melissa and I were doing. And but that community was so infected with wokeism that they didn't know how to put in, because this is one of the shadow sides to the green stage, is boundaries. They have disowned their warrior energy, right? Because it's kind of antithetical to their personas as sort of mature, sensitive, peaceful, loving people. But they have aggression in their shadows like anybody does. But because that was in their shadows, they really couldn't pull out the necessary warrior energy to set boundaries and to kick the woke people out, right? And so the woke people, the angry fourth wave feminist woke people, just ran all over these sensitive, nice green people. And then it just really, but now the woke thing has been kind of put back in its place, right? And this is one of the positive sides of the whole Trump movement thing, because they wear their warrior on their sleeve. They don't hide from their warrior energy. The right wingers, the left wingers put their compassion on their sleeve and they hide their warrior in their shadows. The right wingers put their warrior on their sleeve and they hide their compassion in their shadows. It's kind of an archetypal kind of dichotomy there. And so the right wingers kind of got some steam going, and really, a lot of these new alternative commenters, new pundits that came out, over the last 10 years, have really just made the whole woke thing look like the clown show that it is. Now there's truth in there. It's the same truth that's been being carried by liberal progressives all throughout, time, and all throughout the, women's rights and civil rights and equality of the sexes and all of this, and acceptance of homosexuality and all these kinds of things that have been part of that, which are themselves just a natural progression into the green meme, into the green stage of consciousness. And that's the positive side of it. But then, all this shadow stuff emerged from it. And all this kind of fake green stuff was this performative, fake, persona-based green stuff. That's the woke stuff. And so I think now that the sensitive green community is now, I don't know if they're consciously admitting this, they're not consciously admitting it, but I think they're probably feeling relieved unconsciously that the crazy woke people have been kind of shown up. And now that's been, even if Democrats in the United States get control, I don't think you're gonna see, I don't think it's possible. I think that's peaked. I don't think it's possible to get a whole bunch of energy behind that and the transgenderism and all that other just crazy stuff that's been going on. I don't think that's going to really, take off again. So that's kind of where we're going to be able to look back at that and be like, wow, that was a pretty crazy time. And it's still going to go on, but not to the degree that it has been. It's really been exposed and dethroned, I think. This is my prediction, at least. So that relieves all of these nice, green, intelligent, sensitive people who are not crazy, activists and do not want to, do all the crazy stuff. But they do need to develop some boundaries. They do need to get in touch with their warrior energy, and so that's where they need to move into second tier. And then when they're in second tier, then they're going to be able to do that, and they're going to be able to see from a meta perspective, what's going on. They're going to be able to do this deeper shadow work and everything. So that's kind of my prediction on that. And now what I've been kind of doing now is making another attempt. This is like the third or fourth time that I've made an attempt to try to formulate my work, the work of me and Melissa, into a module that can be palatable for people at a certain stage of psychosocial consciousness. And like I was saying earlier, I tried with the Jungians, I tried with the red pill people, I tried before with the green people, but there was so much of the woke stuff in there that was getting shut down. I'm going to try again with the green people. And so my current plan is to develop a system that I can teach to people who are in the yoga community and the so-called spiritual community and wherever that is. And there is some of that here in Austin. Austin was kind of a counterculture little micro center. Where we were before in San Francisco Bay Area, that was like the epicenter. That was probably the biggest place for all of this. That's, Haight-Ashbury district and all that kind of stuff and, all that. But anyway, so that's what I'm doing right now. And what I'm putting out there can be used by anybody. It can be used by anybody if you can, wherever, if you can take it, if you can handle it, you can take it. It doesn't matter what stage you're at, but it's really mostly going to be identified by people who are in green and above. So that was just a little bit of stuff there to kind of introduce today, or get us through our agenda for today. I didn't know I was going to talk about the politics and I didn't know I was going to talk about that. I'm looking at my notes and going, yeah, and that kind of came out. Now, here's something else. Back to that whole thing of not to be able to put myself on any kind of a pedestal here, because just because I say, okay, well, I'm at second tier or whatever, there's no, that doesn't, so I'll tell you. So I live in this neighborhood, and it's gotten very busy in this area, and this was a quiet little neighborhood, nice little neighborhood, very quiet, and all this traffic started. It's not a highway, but a main big road where all this traffic started piling up. It didn't used to pile up there, but so many people have moved to the area that now it piles up there at rush hour, and people have been cutting through our neighborhood. And so they race through our neighborhood. Even though I have a bunch of stop signs and bumps and everything, they come through here and they act like this is their new highway. And they're done with work and they're frustrated and they want to get home, and they're cutting through our neighborhood. And it's against the county rules, but there's no enforcement. And so, I've done different things, and a number of us have done different things to try to slow it down or to stop it, and nothing has really worked. But some lady in a BMW was, tailgating me as I'm driving through there at the speed limit, and she's trying to blow through there, and she just blows by me, and while people are walking on the street, and does this dangerous move, and then so I just honked at her, and then I tried to actually catch up with her at the stoplight and kind of, go roll down my window and yell at her. And but she ran away from me, and I couldn't get her. But so this is an example, and I was taken over. So I was taken over by this warrior complex that has been, it's been back there, but it hasn't been triggered in a while. And then I noticed, after the fact, oh wow, look what I did. Right? And I couldn't actually notice while I knew what I was doing, but I couldn't stop myself from doing it until after. Now, I never ended up pulling her over and yelling at her or anything like that, but I attempted to. And so that's an example of how I regressed down, right? I regressed down to a lower level, to the red level of consciousness. And then I came back and said, oh, okay, let me analyze what happened. And then now I'm able to talk about it in public, and I don't have any shame over it, and I have no problem talking about it. And so that kind of shows you kind of where my center of gravity is, but I can fall down. And so anytime someone is saying, this is the level I'm at or whatever, and, talking up second tier or whatever the hell they're saying, like I've been saying tonight, doesn't mean that we have it figured out. Doesn't mean that we're not regressing from time to time. Doesn't mean that we don't have wounds that are still active. doesn't mean that we don't have immature parts that are active. And so this whole thing about that I've been talking about with second tier or whatever level you're at in the integral system is for reference, and it shows you kind of where you might be averaging, but it doesn't mean that you don't have issues, right? And so there's not really that much bragging rights until you get to the point to where you can those kinds of things that would normally trigger you just don't trigger you anymore. Still, you shouldn't be bragging. That's a shadow of itself, right? It's, that's some kind of like, spiritual grandiosity, right? And that's shadow material. So when I talk about second tier, and I talk about, I'm looking for people in second tier, and where are all the second tier people? And I couldn't find anybody that was at my level, and I start talking like that. I mean, that's true, but I'm not using that to brag or anything. I'm just using that to try to identify, or try to figure out what the hell's going on here. How come there's so few people that can understand where Melissa and I were at and what we were talking about? There are some people, and they look at what we put out and the way we talk, and they're like, hey, right on, high five, I'm with you. It's great. There's very few of us, yes. So, I know there's others, but it's kind of frustrating, and that's why I started this show, is for that purpose. But what's up, Theo? We're merely human beings at the end of the day. Nobody's perfect. Yeah, I mean, that's simply put, and basically we're just human beings. But I would put it in psychological terms and say we have reactivity, right? We have dissociated parts. We have trauma patterns, trauma imprints from our own childhood or epigenetically passed to us. And so we have these sort of these points where we can regress down to. We have archetypal energy that isn't properly flowing, and then it's moving through these shadow complexes, just like what you have with the government. It's like the whole thing. Yeah, Theo's on here now. So, we can talk about Israel. So the whole thing with Iran and all this kind of stuff, right? This whole thing is so, it's like I just see this whole thing with the Middle East and all of this. And then, the rest of the West is all embroiled in it too. And I just see it as, I take a shadow map of the human psyche, and I look at it, through whatever lens of IFS or Robert Moore's archetypes or Eckhart Tolle's pain body or whichever model. I look at that, or I overlay those models, and then I can kind of see the shadow of the psyche. And then I just take that map, and then I just put that onto geopolitical events, and I see the same thing, right? So when I see Israel-Palestine or Israel-Iran, or I see all the people who are waking up to to the Israel thing and all of that, and then they're becoming anti-Semitic, and I see that whole thing, and I'm just like, that just looks exactly like what I see when I look at my own shadow, or when I looked at Melissa's shadow, or when I look at anybody else's. When I have any other kind of relationship with somebody else, with a client or with somebody in my life, and I look at their shadow profile, their pain body profile, and I look at what's going on over there, and I'm like, oh yeah, same thing, they match up. So that just tells me that the reason why we have these constant ongoing conflicts, where you have these nations or these tribes that are just constantly warring with each other, and they're just addicted to this sadomasochistic. It's sadomasochistic. I was questioning Robert Moore's shadow profile of the warrior archetype, and he called it a sadomasochist. So it's a sadist on the positive side. It's sadistic. When the warrior gets too shadowy on the active side, I should call it, when it gets too shadowy on the active side, it becomes sadistic. It likes killing and overkilling and torturing and rubbing it in. It likes that. Or masochistic, where it does things, the warrior function does things that ends up stabbing yourself. You end up stabbing yourself. You may not think you're doing that, but you keep digging a hole for yourself deeper and deeper and deeper. So it's masochistic. You think that you're doing something to achieve your warrior goal, to dominate the other tribe or whatever. But then what you're really doing, but you can't see it, is you're digging your own grave. So it's a masochistic, and so it's a sadomasochistic circuit that's running. And that is going on for sure in the Middle East with all these tribes. They're sadomasochistic. And so, they think that by destroying the other team, by destroying the other tribe, that they're going to win. But what ends up happening is that they end up just flushing themselves down the toilet. Like the Israel thing right now, the Likud party, is they're thinking, okay, well, we got our ally Trump in the White House right now, so we better do what we've always wanted to do. And we better, grab Lebanon and grab the Gaza and the West Bank, and we better, break apart Iran and grab the parts of Syria that we want. We better do this now. And so they just all out do it. And then all the teams of monkeys just get together, and then they all just, and they all do it. And they don't realize that all they're doing is creating so much back pressure. They're just making it so that they're not going to be able to have a nice, peaceful place to live once they've expanded. They're not going to have a nice, peaceful place to live. They're going to be at war with people forever. So until they can learn to turn that off and to get healthy in their warrior function, and they're going to have to get to a higher level to be able to do that, then all they're doing is just making an environment for themselves of eternal war. And they don't see it. They can't see it. And the United States is involved in the whole thing too, because the United States does the same thing. They go wherever the hell they want to go. They go to Venezuela. They just bully and take. And they, manipulate everybody's currencies and do all these different shadowy things. And they think that they're going to, have hegemonic power over that. All it's doing is making the United States look like a bunch of losers. The whole idea that we were we were these heroes, and we were the good guys and all that, that's over now. And that's all being destroyed by these shadow warriors. And so it's so sad to look at all of this happening, and all these people thinking that they're going to get something by using this energy in the way that they're using it, by being these overkillers. They think they're going to get something. All they're getting is they're just digging their own graves, whether physically or politically, and so, it's just nasty. And I feel sad for Jewish people, because they didn't, in our country, in the United States, most of them are Reformed Jews, and they're not even following all that stuff. They're not even looking at the Torah or whatever. They're not even have anything to do with that. And these jerk-offs over over there are just ruining everything for everyone and making them look bad and creating all this anti-Semitism that's now erupted. And so it's just, what a mess. What an absolute mess. And I'm just tired of it. And I just wish, but you know what? If it wasn't Israel, Palestine, Iran, Saudi, whatever the hell, Middle East conflagration, it would be somewhere else. Because that's how the pain body works. It would be China and Taiwan and here and there, or it would be South America, and it is all those places. But it would just be more focused there or something. So it's not a problem. It's not like if we could just stop China or stop Israel or stop Venezuela, then we could have peace. No, the pain body goes, the virus goes, we would say, to wherever you're weak. Wherever you're weak, it's going to show up, and it's going to show you where you're at. That's what it's going to do. It's going to show you where you're at. So that's that whole thing. And I've been talking on the politics thing and everything for now like an hour now. And like I said, I usually don't talk politics, and today I just kind of slipped into that. And if anybody wants to, comment, and take this somewhere else, we'll go there. But this was also on my list, and I think this was all triggered by the whole Iran thing. I think that's why I decided tonight that I was going to mention a little bit some various things about politics and kind of go in that direction. But I'm out of the whole national politics thing. I'm back out of it. I don't know. I could give a crap about that. It's just pitiful. And now let's get out of that whole area and let's let me go through my thing and see what else. I've talked about that. And I think maybe I'm going to tell you about what I've been doing. Yeah, here's one more thing. Then I'm going to talk about my grief process with Melissa until you guys interrupt me and we talk about something else. But sorry, I can't read the text here without my glasses. But I've been thinking about, like I was saying, I'm gonna start bringing this material to some of these folks who are in the yoga community, and some people who are in the so-called spiritual community. This is kind of a product of the New Age movement that kind of preceded it, and they are under the impression often that if you talk about or think about or get involved in anything that's shadowy, then you're giving it energy, right? The Christians are like this too, actually. What am I talking about? The Christians are all about this. So this is not just New Agers. This goes back. They think that if you talk about, like, they'll say the devil, they call it the devil. The shadow is the devil is a personification of the shadow. And so if you talk about the devil, if you think about the devil, you're inviting the devil into your life. If you talk about corruption, if you think about evil and talk about it and all of that, you're bringing it into your life and you're contaminating yourself, and you want to get that stuff off of you, and you don't want to talk about it or think about it because that's a contaminant. And they're wrong. They're wrong. That might be true at a certain psychosocial stage, but it is not true at where our potential is. So it's definitely not true at the green level. It's not even true at the orange level, orange, green, or teal, second tier. It's not true at those levels. So when you get in touch with the shadow, whether it's internal or external, when you look at the whole, all that stuff I was talking about with Israel-Palestine, or I was talking about, or deep state and Trump and all that, whatever it is, evil stuff, nasty stuff. If you look at that stuff, you now give yourself an opportunity to react to it, and you get an opportunity to see where your reactivity is, where your triggerability is, and you get a chance to see where you need to work, right? And then when it comes to your inner stuff, your grief, your rage, narcissism, grandiosity of any kind, things like jealousy, envy, these kinds of things, all this shadow stuff, when you get in touch with it, you give it an opportunity to start to move through your physiology. It was repressed, it was held back, it was pushed underground. And now you give it the opportunity to move up and move into consciousness where it dissipates. The more you look at it, the more you talk about it, the more you journal it, the more you make art about it, the more you feel it, the more it gets processed, and you relieve yourself of that shadow energy. You integrate it. So the whole intuition or thought that you shouldn't touch your shadow material because it'll make you shadowy is the exact opposite of the truth, at least at this stage. In very early stages where it might lead to just massive amounts of guilt and shame that you couldn't handle, 1,000 years ago, sure, I can accept that. But where so many people are at now, that is residual. That needs to be thrown away as appropriate to a prior stage. It's not appropriate anymore. Now we're at the stage where you get in touch with that material and you dissipate it. You're bringing light to it. By looking at it, you're enlightening the shadow, right? So that idea that you shouldn't touch it or anything like that, all that does is make it grow. The Christian or New Age idea that you shouldn't touch your shadow material just makes it grow. And so that has to be something said. Theo says, yes, if something triggers you, that means there's inner work to do there. Exactly. It is whatever is triggering you, that image of that person or that trait, that thing, that image is related to an aspect of you that's in your shadow that you need to go dig up and uproot and say, well, how is that in me? Where is that thing I dislike out there or in him or her? Where is that trait in me? Where is that thing? Where is that image, that motif in me? And then you have to go down there and dig it up and bring it into consciousness and do something with it. Talk about it, write about it, make art about it, feel it, think about it, be with it, accept it. And you have to go do that repeatedly until you've moved through that material. So that's what we do when we're here at this level. So I talked about as above, so below, how when I look at the whole, all the conflict out there and stuff, and how that's just it's an exact replica of what's going on inside of us. But, there's some other stuff and some kind of dark stuff that I have written in there that I'm not gonna. So now let me move into talk a little bit about the whole thing that's been going on with my process with Melissa. So Melissa, people know, Melissa was my partner, my soulmate, my wife. I had known her since probably 2008 or 9 or something like that. And then we started going together in 2012, 2013. And then Melissa passed in January of 2025 of cervical cancer. And it was something that Melissa had already had cervical cancer, just stage 1, and she had beat it back. And that was 25 years prior. And her father died young, in his 50s, is like at age 54, of colon cancer. And so she was always thinking to herself in the back of her mind, this might get me. And, as I've talked about many times, Melissa was kind of influenced by the Persephone archetype. And so she had had many dark nights of the soul. She had also had many periods of total and complete ecstasy and prolific artistry. So she had experienced both sides. But my life with her was incredibly stimulating, incredibly prolific. And we did this whole alchemy trip together. and wrote those books and did everything that we did. We put that band together, the '01 Experience. That took us 4 years. It was a magnificent progressive rock band, and we put all our ideas into the lyrics and to the visuals, and it was just like we did so much. And it was our relationship was so advanced, really, for both of us. It was the most advanced relationship either of us had ever had. And we were able to do all this shadow work together and all this conflict resolution together. And we were both so committed to evolving ourselves and using the relationship to evolve ourselves that it was just so invigorating at all times. It was just an amazing, amazing thing to have experienced. It just came out of nowhere. And we both just benefited so much from this. So it was really one of the most amazing things that's ever happened to me in my life, or that I could even imagine happening. And then her leaving, her passing away. It wasn't like a lot of breakups. People grow away from each other, or they have conflicts that they can't resolve and they break up, and there's anger and there's resentment and all of that, and that kind of helps them to close the door on the relationship. And it kind of helps them to, it kind of cuts off their grief process because they have anger in there, and so it kind of switches it over from grief to anger. We didn't have that. There was no anger whatsoever. It was just, oh wow, so Melissa's my best friend, my soulmate, and now she's gone. And my whole life is oriented around her, and now she's gone. And we thought that we were going to beat this. And then suddenly, boom, her body just shut down. And so that to me is just so shocking. And so, I learned how to cry because we were doing this John Ruskin's emotional clearing process years before. And so we had processed a lot of old stuff, a lot of child stuff using that process before. So I kind of had that in my toolkit. And then I just had to use that all the time. I just cried, and I'm just constantly crying. And I'm a year and 2 months out, and a lot of that has been processed. Not all of it. It comes back in waves. But I have been doing everything I can to allow that process to move through me, and to not try to shut it down, and to allow it to do what it's doing, and for it to just show me what it wants to show me and take me where it wants to take me. And I don't do anything to shut down the grief or to shut down the angst of losing her. I just allow it to be, and it does its thing. And now I'm over here, and I'm like, okay, I'm just now starting to kind of feel like, oh, okay, I guess I'm doing my own thing now. It's not like, in a way I'm just carrying on what Melissa and I were doing. So I'm still in a way, it's still like we still have partnership. It's like everything that I do now is like approved by her. I still talk to her. I talk to Melissa every day. I have her pictures. I have an altar with her pictures and all her items, her sacred items on there. I talk to it. I light the candles. I ring the little Tibetan bell that she used to ring when she lit the candles. And I dream about her all the time. And so I'm still, working with Melissa, talking to her, working with her, and I hear her voice and what she would say. And when I have questions, I just ask myself, well, what would Melissa do? Like the Christians have, what would Jesus do? I got, what would Melissa do? And so I just ask myself these things. And so I stay in touch with her spirit that way. And so that's what I've been doing, and it's been just weird. It's just weird. I would even say it's more weird than it is hard. It's hard, but it's weird. It's bizarre. It's just so weird because we were so bonded. And now it's like, and if she were alive, if like she had said, oh, in order for me to heal, I'm going to have to go live with my sister in Massachusetts or something. And, we'll keep talking, but we're not going to live together. I would have been like, okay, that sucks, but, I understand. And we would have just separated, but stayed friends. And, it would have kind of worked itself out in a slower, more organic way. We never would have broke up with anger or anything. It was just, that was not possible. That wasn't available. That wasn't how we were. But this way of her just, boom, she's gone. She was in the kitchen. She loved cooking. She was in the kitchen cooking dinner up until, even though she was in pain. And the pain got real bad over the last 2 months. But before that, it was, she was just hanging with it. And she would be in the kitchen cooking dinner, and we'd be talking about metaphysics and all this stuff that I talk about. We'd be talking about it and everything. And then her stomach, her bowels just shut down. Her whole bowels, she couldn't get it out or bring it in. She would puke it back up. And her whole digestive system just said, no more, we're done. And it was only 13 days from the time I took her to the hospital to get rehydrated after a week of puking. And then she was there for 1 day, and then she was back out for a few days. And then I took her back in, and 13 days later, she was gone. So it was very quick. And then she wanted to be sedated. She wanted to be put on, on morphine. They gave her, Ativan and morphine, whatever they call it, Dilaudid or whatever they call it. And so she was pretty much asleep or half awake, half conscious most of the time. We had one phone call where they forgot to give her meds. And she called me when I was here at the house at night, like at 10 at night. She called me, and we had about an hour-long conversation. And she said, I'm sorry that I couldn't heal this. And that was, and I, at the time, I didn't really accept that. I was like, well, we're still working on it. We thought she had a bowel obstruction. We're still working on it. We're going to figure out what this is with your stomach, and we're going to get you home and keep on going with this, keep on going with the whole healing thing. But I think that was her soul was saying, look, I got to go now. And so that happened. And then I spent most of last year making the film about her. And I still encourage people to watch the film. Now, it hasn't been released on the internet yet, but anybody can just send me a message, and I'll send you the link to the film so you can watch it. And then towards the end of this year, I'm going to have it released. It's being shopped to some film festivals. The funny thing is that we knew. It's so crazy. The whole thing is so synchronistic and so wild because we knew that we were making a movie. When we first got together, everything was so fantastic and so charged with metaphysical energy, and we were so creative, and we were just downloading. We're like, whoa, this is really incredible what's happening to us. We should start documenting this. So at first, I just started to use this little micro recorder, and I just started recording all our conversations when we would go for walks. Or just when we were hanging out, and when good conversations would come up, I would just hit record on that thing. And then I started recording video on my phone or on iPads. And so I just recorded so much material. And at first we thought we were going to make a movie about the shadow side of reality, and we called it V is for Virus. And we wrote up a treatment for it, and we were going to put it out there. But then we realized, we're not far enough along in the process yet to put that movie out. And so I did some interviews for it and stuff like that, and some of that's in the movie. But then we also had this concept called living in the movie, which is like when Carlos turned me on to Vadim Zealand, or plenty of other people, Bernardo Kastrup, and people use this analogy of life as a movie, as a projection. And we were using this analogy, this living in the movie analogy all the time. It's a chapter in one of the books, and we're constantly using this movie analogy. And we also knew we were making a movie. And there's a scene in the movie that I finally did make where Melissa describes, hey, so life is like a movie. Actually, we had a phrase, and it was, life is like a movie, and in our movie, we're making a movie about directing the movie of life. That's what we used to say. And there's a scene in the film where she explains that and what it means and everything. And so we knew that just by recording ourselves, that there was eventually going to be a movie made about it. But then COVID happened, and we moved to Texas, and our whole kind of alchemical bubble kind of shifted. And it kind of, sort of our magic bubble kind of got, it didn't collapse or anything, but it was like the hermetic vessel was kind of like the door was opened on it, and it kind of got disturbed. And so when we got to Texas, we're like, okay, well, we have to reorient ourselves, and we have to reorient ourselves and figure out what we're doing. And we had to put the band back together over here under a new name, and we had to jam with new people. And at the time COVID happened, Melissa had to play on the street. We had to set up this street set rig for her, and we did other stuff when we were here. And we had to kind of figure out the community over here, and it kind of shifted everything artistically for us. And then she got sick. And then there was 2 years of just paying attention to that. Now, we went to Europe twice with my other band that I always had, and went to Europe twice, and we did things. Went to Chicago. We did stuff while she was in pain. And so we were still doing stuff, but our kind of magic vessel kind of was kind of messed up a little bit. And so the whole idea of making the movie about directing the movie of life, that kind of got put on hold, although I was still constantly recording everything. And I would always record her. I would always point the camera at her, and then we would both talk. And she just let me do that the whole time. We both sort of knew that, hey, eventually this stuff's going to get used. This movie's going to get made, and we're going to figure it out. And we never really, finally, she never said anything before she left about, okay, here's what I want you to do. Here's what I want in the movie. Here's what I don't want in the movie. Here's what you should do next, or nothing. All I have to go by is what we had said over the years and what I knew was her intentions from all those years. And so I had to do that. So now I made this movie. And it was it wasn't just a movie about how we were directing the movie of life, or how we were developing this alchemical way of life and this alchemical shadow work system and all that. It wasn't just about that. It was a lot about Melissa and her life and her past and her bands. And it was a bunch of things all together that kind of give you a broad picture of Melissa. And me and her, that's a part of it, but that's not the whole thing. So I did that just to finish up the story here. So I did that. I made the movie, Melissa Mari, Musical Alchemist of Stage and Psyche, melissamarimovie.com. I made the movie, and then there's a scene. It's that same scene where she's explaining about the movie of life. She says, this is going to be played all over the world. This is going to be in film festivals all over the world. That's very grandiose. She was very grandiose about her artistry. And that kind of had positives and negatives. Positive side is it gave her a lot of energy. The negative side is not all those things came true. But that was in there, and I thought to myself, okay, because I was just going to put this movie out on the internet. You know, Melissa isn't well known by the world or anything like that, and can't get picked up by some production house or anything like that. I mean, if it would, the story is really good. Melissa's story is amazing and easily could be redone as like a Netflix movie or Hollywood movie, definitely, but they wouldn't use my iPhone footage. They would remake the whole thing with actors. And so that's not what this is. This is a documentary. And so anyway, I was just trying to finish. Oh, so the film festival thing. And so that's what made me think, okay, I gotta have to give it a shot. I'm gonna have to go submit it to film festivals, figure out how that's done, and try to honor her wish that whatever movie we were gonna make would actually go to film festivals. So that's what I've been doing. And I kind of figured out how that's done, how filmmakers do that. And I've submitted it to 30-something film festivals so far. It's been rejected by 3 out of the 36 or 8 or however many have it. And then the rest, it's still in consideration right now. One of them gave me an honorable mention, and so one of them liked it, and said, but we're not going to put it in there. And one of the reasons why is because it's so long. It's 100 minutes. And a lot of these film festivals just have very little room for full-length features. A lot of short films fill up these festivals. So, I mean, I would have been better off. I would have had a much better chance getting it into the fests if I had made it under, 60 minutes or under. But I just couldn't do that. It just wasn't possible, and the movie needed to be made as a piece of. It needed to be historical. Now I'm going to make at least one other movie, maybe a couple that'll be different, and I'll make those shorter. But this one was long. And so that's what's going on with the film. And so it's being shopped, and I'm going to have to end up waiting till probably the end of this year, fall of this year, before I can put it out on the internet. And then I will, and I might buy some ads and stuff and kind of, do some stuff on YouTube or Facebook or something to get some people to watch it and see if I can get it to kind of get some views. And yeah, so that it'll come out. But I have shown it to maybe 40 people. More people have watched it, but maybe 40 people have watched it and then sent me a message. And it's been just tremendous. The comments. If you go to melissamarimovie.com, you can see I have about 5 or 6 of the reviews up there. And they're just tremendous. People are just, it's a very, very deep movie. It's a very deep and moving movie. Melissa was a very, very deep and moving person. And the whole thing about her death is in there, so it's very touching. And you get to see what kind of a person she was, and you get to see how brilliant she was as a musician, as an artist. It's just really crazy that you would think that, I consider Melissa to be one of the greatest rock singers and performers of all time. I mean, I seriously put her in that kind of category. And she was loved by the people who knew her, in her local scenes where she played and all of that, but she never got to, international level like her heroes. So, but that's how it is for for most of us. So anyway, that's just the breaks. That's how it goes. Let me see if you guys have been saying anything. Yeah, it was peaceful. Way to go. Yeah. And she was asleep. She was unconscious when she was mostly asleep, mostly unconscious most of the time. We moved her to hospice after 12 days in the hospital and 1 day in the hospice. And the last night when we transferred her to the hospice, she was basically just kind of asleep and most of the time. And we transferred her, and they woke her up in the transfer process. They showered her And that kind of shocked her and woke her up. And I walked into the room after they had showered her, and she was just like, her eyes were wide open, just like staring up. And she said, "What happened?" And I said, "Oh no, I think they gave you a shower. It's okay though, it's okay. You're all right now, it's all right." And she was very disoriented and didn't know what was going on. But then it was in the hospice. Now in the hospital, she's all, you're in, it's like, she's all tied into the machines and all that. But in the hospice, she was in this bed, and I was able to crawl into bed with her and just lay with her. And so that calmed her down after that shock of being transferred. That calmed her down. And so she calmed down. But I was asking the nurses not to give her regular 4-hour medication, IV medication, because I wanted her to try to wake up and to be able to be more conscious, and so she could start directing her own care. And so we tried that night, because I had more control as her husband, in the hospice than I did in the hospital. And so the nurses, they listened. They said, "Okay, we don't have to give it to her every 4 hours. You can just call us when you want us to give her her meds, and we'll see how it goes." And at the time, she had a tube down her throat because they were pumping bile out of her stomach, but she pulled it out for the second time. And so, but when I stayed up with her, and she was just kind of, what she was doing is she was just drinking juice and water. And when she was awake, she was either asleep or she was drinking juice and water and just saying, "Juice, juice, juice." And I would bring her more juice and she'd drink more juice because it just went right through her, and that's all she was getting. She couldn't eat. And so I was just giving her juice and water, and she would just be there, doing that. But then she would start doing very childish things. Her child parts, this part we call running girl, was active. And so she would start putting her leg on the edge of the bed, acting like she was going to get out. And one time in the hospital in the middle of the night, she did actually get out of her bed and tried to crawl out of there. So we already knew that there was a part of her there was different parts of Melissa, like there are of all of us. And one part we call running girl, and running girl wanted to get the hell out of there. The other part we called sick girl. She liked being in the hospital, getting taken care of. So sick girl wanted to be there. Running girl did not want to be there. And those two were in conflict. And then when she was in this state, they were kind of going back and forth. But running girl was trying to get her out of the bed. It was like 2 a.m. in the hospice the night before she passed, and she just kept on getting out of the bed or trying to get out of the bed. And I ended up having to talk to her like a little girl. I had to call her by her full name and say, "You stay in your bed." I had to talk to her like a 4-year-old. And that worked. That worked to some degree. She listened to that kind of, daddy talking to 4-year-old girl. That worked at her stage of consciousness. It's so weird how she just devolved down from this very high level person down to 4 years old. People do that. I mean, this is well known. And so then but after, it was like 2-3 in the morning, and she just kept on futzing and trying to get out of the bed and everything. So I finally told the nurse, I said, "Look, just give her her shot, give her her stuff, so she can relax, and so I can go to sleep," because I was going to sleep in the hospice with her that night. Her first night there. I wasn't going to just leave her there on her first night there. I was going to stay the night with her, and then I thought she was going to be there for a long time, a while at least. And so I was going to just leave her there in the nights like I did in the hospital. But that night I left her. I went to sleep. We medicated her. I went to sleep. I woke up at like 8 or 9 in the morning, and I walked. She was still sleeping. They kept giving her her meds. I went out to run some errands. I went and did the laundry, and did some other things. Went to the grocery store, or whatever else I did that morning, and then I bought some juice and stuff like that to bring back to the hospice. But I was driving around and the nurse called me and said, I think you better come back here right now. I think she's on the way out. And I was like, whoa, okay, wow. All right, this is getting serious now. And she said, the nurse said that her hands were turning purple and her feet were turning purple. And so they knew her body was totally shutting down at that point. So I went back there and I looked at her hands and feet and they were right. They were turning purple. And Melissa was just very peacefully sleeping, but her heart rate was very high. It was like 180. Bump, bump, bumps. So her heart rate was going fast, and that's what happens when you start to shut down. And so her whole system, the nurse told me, she said the body has shutdown instructions. Just like it's got startup instructions when you're born, it's got shutdown instructions for when you need to pass. And so I called my mom, who lived about, an hour away, and she drove up, and we just sat with her for the afternoon and into the evening. And then I was out in the hallway talking to our good friend, Mikal, Jungian psychologist. I was out in the hall talking to him, and that's, I think, when Melissa passed. Because I was sitting next to her, holding her hand most of the time. And then I got up to make that phone call, and that's when she snuck out of there. And people do that, I learned later. So she snuck out of there when I was in the hall, and my mom was in the room the whole time though. But so I didn't feel or see any kind of weird stuff like the spirit leaving her body or anything like that. I thought maybe that would happen. No, that didn't happen. It was just, I didn't have any dream about her that night or anything like that. It took about a week before I started dreaming about her. So she just passed on out of here very smoothly, very, easily in the end, and just without a whole. And the interesting thing about Melissa is that she did that in her relationships and different stages of life. She had all these stages of life that just abruptly would, and then she would go this direction, and then she would go this. She'd have 5 years or 10 years of this, and then this. So there's a scene in the movie where she's talking and she says, I feel like I'm a cat and I have 9 lives. I'm a cat with 9 lives and I'm on my 9th life. And I said, really? You think you're on your 9th life? She said, yeah, I think I am. And that was like 2015 or 2016 or something like that when she said that. And so she always knew. And there's plenty of times where she talked about it. It's in the movie. Plenty of times where she talked about how that, she didn't know how long she was going to be on the planet. That was always in the back of her head. She kind of always knew. So that was Melissa's trip, and I was just very, very privileged to have had her in my life. Incredibly privileged. And it felt so incredibly unfair that I had to lose her. Just incredibly unfair. And so, but that is what it is. And I've just cried for hundreds of hours over it all. But now I'm like, okay, so here we are now. Here we are 14 months out now, and the movie's done. I'm going to make more, but at least that I'm really glad I made the movie. I'm really glad I made that movie, and that I did it when I did, because as soon as she passed, as soon as Melissa passed, I said, oh wow, the movie, what are we going to do? I guess I'm making the movie. I guess I'm just going to make it without her then. And I was just like, oh whoa. And I saved everything. I saved all the iPhone. I used to back up our iPhones and iPads onto portable hard drives, and I brought those with me from California to Texas. I got a whole bunch of stuff in storage in California, but I brought these 6 or 7 hard drives with me, like 4 terabytes each. And so I had everything. I had it all. And so within 1 week, I was like, all right, here we go. And I just started going through everything. And I got these programs to help me rename the files and to find things. And I just started making piles of, okay, this goes here and this goes here and this will be included, this won't be included. And I spent until June. I spent like 5 months just organizing the material and then coming up with scripts and trying to figure out what the order of it was going to be and how it was going to be laid out. I think I spent 5 or 6 months on that. And then I spent a number of weeks figuring out DaVinci Resolve, the program that I used. And then I started putting it together. And then I worked on that from, July, August, September, October, November, November, 5 months. I all worked on editing it. So I think it took me 11 months to do the whole film. And I had the energy was there. Every single day, I had drive to just get on the computer and work on it every day for sometimes 2 hours, sometimes 5 or 6 hours. And so maybe an average of 4 hours a day, I was just on it every day for 11 months. And I just had a drive. I had an energy. I was just constantly just really on it, just driven to get this thing done. And I had the energy and it was just coming through me. And it was the same kind of energy that I had when we were doing the other stuff that we were doing, like making bands or making books or whatever. It was a drive. It was a natural energy, creative energy just coming through me that I couldn't control. And so that's what was coming through me to make the movie. And so I recognized that there is no reason, and I should not put off doing this. The energy is here, it's fresh, everything's fresh. Like if I had waited, now it's been 14 months, I still could make the movie about Melissa right now and I would still come out fine. But that's when the energy was. And so I said, okay, I'm on it, I'm doing it. And then I did it. And now I kind of feel like, okay. So now I'm kind of like ready to have another life, to have another scene in my movie of life. I'm ready to have another scene. And so that's why I'm doing this whole 4-quadrant shadow thing and looking for communities to use, to share it with. And I'm like on this other thing, doing this podcast, just because I have to, just because I got to do something else, something related, something that's just a continuation, but it's got to be on the same path, the same alchemy thing. So, if there's anybody in there that wants to talk, today we kind of had a quiet show today. I kind of just been blabbing about different things. Theo's commented a bit. If anybody wanted to comment, I don't know if we'll do calls today. If somebody really wants to call, if somebody has something to call in about, yes, absolutely, you can call. But we're getting towards the end of the 2 hours. I went 3 hours last week. We did 3 hours. Last week was we were kind of busy. Kind of had, I'm looking at the thing here. We've had 48 people show up and just like hang out for a second and leave. And then we have 4 people who are on here right now. And last week we had like 10 to 15 people, varied between 10 or 15 people who were in the chat and who were hanging out, and we were all talking and we were going through stuff. So it was more, and 10 or 15 people talking and everything that's plenty busy. And so that's what that is. And it's just interesting doing this, because I've been thinking about, what is the best way to do this show? And there is originally this show was supposed to be called Solutio Think Tank. And Melissa and I, we came up with this together. And we said, okay, so we've done Shadow Tech Alchemy podcasts, the two of us talking, and we get burned out after like 20 shows. Like we've gone through all our material and we're like, what's it? Then I started doing interview programs. She had her own interview program called Living Gold. Hers was really good. I really liked hers. But I was, with the interview program, or the think tank idea, where you bring other people in who are sort of at this level, these other kind of red-pilled alchemists, second-tier people, however you want to put it. I have such a hard time finding them. There's just not enough of them around who are willing to get on a program and talk. It's like a couple of them have come on and talked with me. But there's a whole bunch of them, there's a handful of them, I can think of about 4 or 5 of them, that I've tried to get to come on to the show or to get interviewed and stuff like that, and they don't want to get out of their little holes. They're just comfortable in their little alchemical little labs, and they don't want to get into the public. And so that's kind of an issue too, is there are people who are at this level. They can talk like this. They can talk about shadow work and alchemy and Jungian psychology and parts work, and they can talk about all that stuff. And processing grief and processing shame and rage and all this and different techniques and inner child work and whatever. They can talk about all that stuff. But they don't want to do it publicly. That's like, oh man. That's annoying to me, to tell you the truth. I do get annoyed by that. Because I'm like, we need you. We need you to be public. We need you to be helping. Right? This is part of the human potential movement. The human potential movement can't go anywhere until people get to this level, until people start doing this shadow work, this parts work. And today we didn't talk too much about technique or anything like that. I think next week I'll do that. I'll make sure that next week, some shows we talk more about technique, some shows we talk about just in general. And but it's like this, it's the human potential movement, and whatever different versions of it have been around, is crashed now because people have realized, unconsciously I guess, it's hit the wall, it's hit the ceiling. It's like the shadow is the moat you have to cross. You have to go through the shadow to get to the next level. To get to second tier, you have to go through the shadow. To evolve, to actually, realize the potential of the human being, you have to go through the shadow. That's the first stage of alchemy. You have to do that. You can't just do NLP or this or that imagination or projection technique or whatever technique, whatever. Or even take psychedelics, or you just can't. You have to do the shadow work. That's the only way to get to the next level of development. And it's going to be different kinds of shadow work for different people who are in different places. But you have to do that. And there's no projecting anymore about what we might be able to do with our consciousness without that. There's a lot of people who are talking about consciousness itself, about consciousness and what is it, and is it primary, and the nature of reality and all that. And that's great. I love that stuff. But that's just still thought stuff. It's not work. It's not actually evolving you, really. So, hi Nina. Let me see if I can read that better. You just joined, but hey, hey man, it's intense energy. Okay, well, we're pretty much just kind of being mellow today. And next week, we'll get more back into techniques and stuff. Trying to lean into community. I feel I've just been chugging along in life for years. Yep, in my own hole, but it's like, how now, what? Well, Nina, you probably saw like the thumbnail of what this show is. It says a place for inner alchemists. So I imagine that you saw that and you're like, okay, well, that sounds like me. You must have thought that, right, when you came in. And so what we're doing here is a simple way, like today earlier, if you will go back and listen to the show earlier, I was talking about integral theory, which I think is very useful to us. But a lot of what I talk about, what Melissa and I were working with, or with what I call people who are doing alchemy, we're pretty much familiar with Jungian psychology. So kind of Jungian psychology is kind of a big chunk of what we're doing here, even though we're expanding from that, because we're now, when did Jung die? And we're now 50, 60 years out from that. And so the Jungian community and the Jungian science, so to speak, has developed a little bit, and there's been some advances, and then there's been all kinds of other ways of doing, especially what we call shadow work, that have been invented since then. So it's sort of this is Jungian, but it's also updated. And so that's kind of what we're doing here, is we're talking about working on ourselves, we're talking about healing ourselves, we're talking about different kinds of techniques for doing psycho-spiritual healing work, internal family systems work, or pain body work, or all these kinds of things. We're doing that, we're talking about that, we're relating it to alchemy because it is alchemy. And then if somebody has a background in the Eastern spirituality, we can relate it to that too. I have enough of a background in that to know kind of how that kind of relates to a degree. And we're just on the path of what Jung called individuation, of advancing yourself, of working through your junk, working through your wounds, working through the junk that your parents dropped on you, and sifting through your shadow stuff. And that itself is so invigorating and gives you so much meaning. And we're following synchronicities, and we're doing all kinds of, we're just following the alchemical path in a general way. And that gives you so much meaning. It's challenging, but also the process works. And you get so much meaning, and you get so much energy, on the path, on the inner work path, that just becomes part of your lifestyle. And so evolving yourself, you do evolve yourself. You get to higher states of consciousness. You get to higher stages of awareness. You reduce your reactivity. You do purge out your old grief and rage and fear and stuff. It does slowly purge out. And then this whole path is this is basically, it's a weird way to say it, but this is kind of a replacement for a religious way of life. This is, it's got a lot of differences from that, but in a way, it's because it's so incredibly spiritual, and it's not as ritualistic. This is not as ritualistic as religious life, and it's not as stuck in any one kind of model. It's like when you join a religion, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, it's like, here's your idols. They don't call them idols, but here's your idols, and here's your scripture, and here's your ethics, and here's your techniques, and here you go, and this is what we all do. But as alchemists, we don't do that. We use parts from whatever system we want to use, whatever fits with us, and then we basically go on our own alchemical journey, our own inward journey, and we develop our own psycho-spiritual practice. Although there are some motifs that we all share, there's some archetypal motifs, and Jung was pulling a lot of this stuff out. And then we probably, in this community, we use Jung probably as kind of a saint for us, kind of. And for me, Melissa's a saint, because she was just the epitome of the most dedicated alchemist who would basically die for the path of the great work. And so that's what we're doing. But we're our own researchers, we're our own scientists, and we take matters into our own hands. And so we have agency. We're not waiting to be saved. We're taking matters into our own hands, and we're healing ourselves. And so that's kind of maybe one way of explaining what we're doing. You've done Reiki and energy work and parts work for years. Did you say no? Carl Jung, Jung. Yeah. So if you, like I was saying to some of the other folks, Nina, earlier, was everybody should start using some kind of AI program, whether it's built into Google or whether it's ChatGPT or Grok or Perplexity or whatever. Use that program. They're all free. I think Grok you have to pay for. I do pay for Grok, but I've just joined ChatGPT recently, and it's very good and it's free. Use those programs so when you go onto this show or any other thing like this, you can just type in what it is. Someone will say Carl Jung and Jung, Carl Jung, and say, give me a basic history of Carl Jung. What was he about? What did he teach? What is his system? Ask the AI program and it'll tell you, right? So use that to be a researcher and to help yourself, because in the days before AI, it takes a long time to get really deep into the Jungian system or into integral or any of these things and really figure it out. And because now it's you can get there a lot faster now because of the technology. But you can only go so fast, because you can't really understand things that you just read until you actually process them as a whole. So Nina, just to kind of give you I gave you kind of a rundown of what it is, and this is, when you're talking about Reiki, okay, parts work is internal family systems, and that is basically rooted in Jungian psychology. We wouldn't have IFS parts work without Jungian psychology. It's sort of an update to it. It doesn't handle everything that Jungian psychology handles, but it handles a piece of it. So, but if you're kind of interested in those things, that's kind of a spiritual community in general, or Eastern influenced inner work community, that kind of thing, however we put it. And so that's generally, we're generally in that same community. But this thing of being an alchemist, or calling it, like, okay, Carl Jung called this process, this practice of healing and evolving yourself. It's like a Western yoga. And Carl Jung called it individuation. If you see that term individuation, that's Carl Jung. It's his version of the yogic or Eastern path of enlightenment. But Carl Jung was looking in the Western psyche. He was looking in the esoteric tradition of the West more than he was in the East. He looked in the East too, but he was mainly focused on the West. And he went back to all of the alchemists, so to speak, of the Middle Ages and before, and he really studied what that whole thing was and used that to help him create his own system of spirituality. And so the person who is individuating is pulling away from the society and what the society says you should be, and how you should think, and how you should feel, and what you should do with your life, and all of the social constructs or mainstream narratives, we might say now. And you're pulling away from all of that and saying, no, I'm creating my own mind. I'm creating my own religion or my own spirituality. I'm creating my own path in life. I'm doing my own rituals. I'm doing my own thing. I'm becoming an individual, a true individual. And this process of becoming a true individual is also not just, that's like your identity, but it's also about healing and bringing together all of your dissociated parts of yourself to make yourself whole again. So that when you're whole and you're your own unique, whole, healed human being. That's what this is about. And I think after looking at so many different spiritual systems, Eastern, Western, mainstream, esoteric, over the last however many years, I'm 56 now, and I've been looking at this stuff since I was 18 years old or whatever. I don't think there's anything for the Western mind that is as deep and as thorough and useful and spiritual and real as the Jungian system. And one of the primary things about the Jungian system that makes it so real is that we take the shadow, the dark side of our own psyches that we all have, where our rage is, our grief, our sexuality, our grandiosity, all of the stuff that is antisocial. We take that and we go look at it and we integrate it into consciousness, and we're honest about ourselves with it, and we purge it and we bring it up. Whereas almost every other spiritual tradition or just mainstream secular life is about repressing those things. Or in the East, it's about trying to get out of the ego and, reach enlightenment and a non-dual experience and all of this, and just sort of leave the human world behind. This system says, no, we don't leave the human world behind. We develop the ego. We make the ego healthier, flexible, and strong, and we develop ourselves to higher levels of maturity. This is about becoming an actual adult, a psycho-spiritual adult. And so that's what this system is, a very self-responsible, very earthy, and very, dig in and do the work, and very balanced in that way, and masculine and feminine. It's very masculine in that it's very logos oriented, or it has, there's a lot of theory and all that kind of stuff involved, thinking and maps and models. But then it's also very feminine in that it's all about, accessing these energies and working with these energies and making art out of them, or making movement out of them, and talking about them with other people. And it's very, embodied. It's very embodied, this work. And so, to me, is this the Jungian system. And then if you take some other newer stuff that we can put on top of it and some new frameworks, like for example, what Melissa and I developed, then you have what I think is the ultimate spiritual healing and spiritual path of the 21st century for the Western mind. That's my opinion. And so this is just, to me, this is the greatest thing. And then we just, add other stuff onto it, because we're not a cult. And I'm just one person who's just doing this on my own. And then before Melissa passed, I was doing it with Melissa. So that's all what's going on over here. But yes, you're welcome. You've worked with an IFS counselor and a hypnotherapist, so you feel you're in the right place. Okay, yeah. Well, you're absolutely, Nina. You're absolutely welcome and encouraged to come back here. And I do this every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central Texas time for 2 hours or sometimes more. And I'm happy you're in the comments and that you're chatting and that you're talking, and you can even call in if you want to at some point, because if you look at in the description, the call-in numbers are there. But because that's why I'm doing this show. I'm not doing this show to just talk. And this is an esoteric path, and it requires people to kind of slow down and kind of come in here and kind of get used to what's going on here. And it's really for people who want to do the work and then share their experiences This is not like some big old exciting thing that, hey, everybody, and plenty of that kind of stuff on YouTube. But so this is kind of its own little corner, and there's just a handful of us in here. There's only a few of us in here right now. 57 people have come on the show and then kind of cruised on out because it wasn't exciting enough for them. They thought, oh, I saw the thumbnail. It says there's a place for inner alchemists, and they're kind of spiritual people, and they saw something, and they thought, okay. And then they came in here, and there's some intellectual guy that's like talking, and they're like, okay, I'm out of here. So this is kind of a slower place, and it's for people that want to that just and then me talking all the time. It's like you have to kind of figure out whether or not you vibe with where I'm coming from and all of that. And I just kind of talk about all kinds of things. I work for the way I do it is during the week I kind of take notes, try to figure out what I'm going to talk about on the next show. Or if you guys have any comments for me, I work with those. And then I just kind of randomly or just organically, let's say, come into the shows on Tuesdays, and I just talk about what I've been working on. Like today, probably before you showed up, I talked about my whole process, my grief of losing Melissa, and I talked about that for a while. I talked about some political junk in the beginning, how it was just the whole thing with the war in Iran and how that's just such a stupid mess and how it's just a projection of our own shadow stuff. And, and so I talked about some different things like that. But what I'm really doing here is I'm just kind of talking around these subjects until you guys come into the comments and start directing the conversation into where you want it to go. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to take your direction and to go in the direction where you want me to go. I want you to say, well, here's what I've been doing, and this is how it has been working or hasn't been working for me. Or here's a question I have that I never could get answered. I never could figure out why this is the way it is. Or here's a challenge that I'm having with my boyfriend or girlfriend or with my parents or in my life or just with mood swings that I'm having or whatever it is that you're working with. And then I go in your direction, and then we explore your issues, your challenges, and I put my lens and experience onto it. And that's the beauty of this show. That's what this show is supposed to be for. It's supposed to be for you guys. So when you just see me here blabbing, just talking about things that interest me, that's just to keep it going until you guys can come in and we can actually start getting into what really matters. So I very much encourage you guys. Sandra says she was blocked. You're not. No, you're not blocked by me. So I don't know what that was, but yeah. So anyway, that's the rundown, and we'll just keep doing it now. Does anybody? Because let's see, what time is it now? So it's 9:00. So we're kind of done now. But I'm happy to hang out for a little bit longer if we can, if folks want to comment. Yeah, let's see. Nina says that you're glad that you found the channel. Probably wasn't me, more of my, your guides and great spirit. Yes, you can look at it that way for sure. And the moon. Oh yeah. So is it full tonight? I was out there. Listen, the thing with the moon. So I'll have to tell you another time, because she changed her last name to Mari, and Sandra's on here, so Sandra knows about Mari. So Mari is kind of a female spirit of the wilds, spirit of nature, that was associated with Melissa, and Sandra's written some very beautiful poems about Mari, and so I've been talking to Mari through the moon, actually. Now, I'm very kind of scientific kind of person and stuff, and I don't really get too involved in the real kind of anthropomorphizing and the real ancient pagan kind of mindset. Melissa was more into that than me. But I've been since she's been, I've been falling into it more and more. And I've been talking to the moon. I talk to the moon. I talk to Melissa. I talk to Mari through the moon. And it's full tonight, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, lunar eclipse in the south node. Does that mean the south? Does that mean the below the equator? An eclipse down there? But it's just like I'm just really into the moon now. Totally into the moon now. And I talk to her. I talk to the moon every night now. I go out, I talk to the moon every night now. So it's just different. That's new for me. That's different for me to do that. I mean, I was into intuitive sciences like dowsing and tarot and things like that, years ago. But yeah. So I talked to her. And it's called we call that participation mystique, right? It's kind of like, well, when you're in participation mystique, it's like you actually think, it's like a very small child where you actually think that the outer world is part of you, and you don't have a full separation of the outer world, and you're sort of like, mama is like, is it her? Is she out there, or is she here? Where is she? And it's like, you can do that with nature and stuff. And it's kind of like not fully kind of fused, not fully separated from the outside world. And but you can kind of go back into that mode of being. And so that's what I've been doing. All right, everybody. So last call out, and then we'll shut it down for tonight if you guys don't have anything more for me for tonight. I noticed that this show, really, people actually come on this show later. Like, I start at 7 p.m. Oh, Sandra. I don't even know how to block you. I don't even know how I could possibly, from inside of OBS, how I could block you. I don't even know how that's even done. I never blocked anyone before on YouTube. So that's something you've had multiple problems trying to get logged into YouTube in the past. And I didn't check my email, so yeah. Anyway, all right. So see me again next Tuesday. And if anybody wants to watch the movie about Melissa, you can just send me a message, or just send me a message. Just send me a message. If anybody wants to watch the movie about Melissa, send me a message somewhere, whether it's through the website, shadowtechalchemy.com, or my email, shadowtechalchemy@gmail.com, or join me on Facebook, Colin E. Davis, and I will send you the direct link to the movie, and you can watch the movie. Like I said, I can't put it in the public right now because I'm shopping it to film fests. But anyone that wants to see the movie, just let me know, and I'll send you the movie about Melissa. And you can also send me anything you want to talk to next week. Yeah, next week. No, you're not. Yeah, Nina says, Sandra, you're not blocked. You're on the chat. YouTube chat auto blocks some words and stuff. Maybe so. I don't know. Okay. Thank you all, and I'll see you next week. And thank you for hanging out with me. Bye-bye.